Hello everyone. So this is a quick revision lecture on the chapter magnetism and matter. So I hope all of you know what is magnetism. Magnetism is the phenomenon of attracting other magnetic substances like iron, nickel, cobalt, steel, etc. Okay. So in properties of a bar magnet, now bar magnet is also a magnet, right? In properties of a bar magnet, we have that the force experienced by a magnet having magnetic pole M, either of the pole is M, is given by M into B. Okay, where M is the magnetic pole. Now if you have a north pole, say you have north pole and south pole, the north pole is represented by plus M, the south pole is represented by minus M. Now you place a bar magnet, or you have a north pole, you say you have a north pole placed in a magnetic field which is going right side as shown in the diagram. So in that case the north pole will experience a force towards the field. Okay, south pole will experience a force opposite to the field. So this is to be remembered. Force on plus M is towards the field, and force on minus M is opposite to the field. After this we have the relation for magnetic field B. Okay, so magnetic field, the relation for magnetic field B is given by Km by R square. Okay, now K, the constant here, is mu naught by 4 pi M by R square. Now what is R? R is this distance between the magnetic pole and the test pole, you can say, and the field. Okay, magnetic field, say the source field is here, and then this distance between the source field and the test pole, or the source pole also, you can say this, the source pole and the test pole, the distance is R. Okay, so the relation comes out to be mu naught M by 4 pi R square. Next we have magnetic dipole. So I hope you understand what is a dipole. Dipole is two poles separated by a small distance. Now when you separate two magnetic poles by a small distance, you call that as magnetic dipole. So we need to measure magnetic dipole moment in case of a magnetic dipole. So the magnetic dipole moment is defined as product of pole strength into magnetic length, and therefore the relation goes as M dot 2L. Okay, now the direction for magnetic dipole moment is from south to north. This is very important, you need to remember. So we have this in this diagram, you see a bar magnet is shown, and twice L is the distance between the poles. Okay, plus M and minus M. So this constitutes a dipole. Now a wire carrying current or a loop carrying current also acts as a magnetic dipole. Say the direction of the current is this way, like this is outside the page and this is behind the page. Okay, so in such a case you can apply right hand thumb rule to show that the direction in which the thumb points is the north pole and the other is the south pole. So this is also behaving as a magnetic dipole. Now here the relation for magnetic dipole moment will be, in this case when it carries a current I, that will be I into A, current into cross section area of the coil. Okay, next, current loop of area A. Okay, this we have already discussed just now. So if we equate these two equations, like M equal to M into twice L equal to IA, we can write down as the relation for magnetic dipole moment. So SI unit of magnetic dipole moment is ampere meter square or joule per Tesla. Now bar magnet is a permanent magnetic dipole. Yes, so you have a bar magnet. Now the distance from pole to pole is called as magnetic length, and distance from end to end is called geometric length. So always remember that magnetic length is 0.84 times of geometric length. Okay, these things just go through, nothing to explain over here, you will understand them, they are pretty simple. Now if you have a bar magnet freely suspended in air, it will show you the natural north-south direction. Okay, now the line passing through the poles, you call that as magnetic axis. Now if you imagine a plane is passing, if a plane passes through this pole, Okay, if a plane passes through this pole, that you will call as magnetic meridian. Okay, now in a bar magnet you call this as the axial line, the line passing through the axis, and you call this as the equatorial line, which is perpendicular to this axis and passes through the midpoint. So if you break a bar magnet into two equal parts, or it can be unequal parts also, if you just break a bar magnet, then again two dipoles will be formed. Here you had one dipole, here again two dipoles will be formed. Okay, so this will keep on happening. If you break it again similar thing will happen. Now equivalent magnetic moment of a system. Now you have two magnets or two magnetic dipoles aligned in this manner. You see, both are directed along the same direction, like south to north. Okay, and they are aligned at an angle theta with each other. The first one has magnetic dipole moment m1, the second one has m2. In such a case, the relation for equivalent dipole moment is given by square root of m1 square plus m2 square plus 2 m1 m2 cos theta. Okay, this is just the resultant relation that you read in parallelogram law of vector addition. Now if you apply theta equal to 0 degree, then you will see that m becomes equal to m1 plus m2. Okay, next, if you reverse one of the dipole moment, okay, or if you reverse one of the dipole, say you have reversed this, in such a case the equivalent dipole moment will be given by square root of m1 square plus m2 square minus 2 m1 m2 cos theta. Alright, now here also if theta is equal to 0, then what will happen? M will become m1 minus m2. The third situation is when you place one of the dipole moment or one of the dipole perpendicular on the other. Okay, this arrangement can be this way or this way. In both the situations, like in the previous relation, if you put theta equal to 90 degree, right, m will come out to be square root of m1 square plus m2 square. Okay, now what happens when you cut a bar magnet? Okay, so we can cut it along equatorial line, we can cut it along axial line, and we'll also see cutting along equatorial and axial both. So in the first case, you cut a bar magnet into two equal parts. This was the original bar magnet, you cut it into two equal parts. Original magnetic moment was m. Now the new magnetic moment for each part will be m by 2. Okay, m prime is equal to m by 2. Now if you cut a bar magnet equatorially into n equal parts, then new magnetic moment will be m by n. Just remember the relations. Okay, now again if we go to axial line, cutting bar magnet along axial line. So if you cut it into two equal parts, magnetic moment for each part will be m by 2, where m was the original magnetic moment. Okay, now if you cut it into n equal parts, similar as before, m prime will be equal to m by n. So till here it is fine. Now you see, you cut it equatorially as well as axially. Okay, say this has been cut axially and then equatorially, so you get four parts out of it. Okay, so what is the magnetic moment for each part? The magnetic moment for each part is m prime is m by n square. This will be the general relation. Okay, so m by n square will be the general relation. Now in this case, say you cut it into n parts. Okay, n parts we have it as a different case. Let me do it there. Now here you cut it into four parts. So m by 2 square, that will give you m by 4. So you cut it into n times, right? Then m prime will be m by n square. Alright, so these are the relations for magnetic moment, equivalent magnetic moment. Now we have Coulomb's law. So you have two magnetic poles separated by distance r. In such a case, Coulomb's law says that the force of attraction or repulsion is given by mu naught by 4 pi m1 m2 by r square. Okay, so where mu naught by 4 pi value is 10 to the power minus 7 Newton per ampere square. Okay, so this is your Coulomb's law. Now, magnetic force between two short magnetic dipoles. Now, when they are arranged parallel to each other, first case, when they are arranged perpendicular to each other. So when they are arranged parallel to each other, the relation is mu naught by 4 pi 6 m1 m2. This is in terms of dipole moment, remember. 6 m1 m2 divided by r to the power 4. Next, you have, in case of perpendicular arrangement, 3 m1 m2 divided by r to the power 4. Okay, the previous Coulomb's law was in terms of pole strengths. These are pole strengths. This is distance squared, and these are dipole moments, and this is distance to the power 4. Okay, so moving to the next one. Now, magnetic field intensity. Finding magnetic field intensity. The relation is, have we done this relation before? Yes, we have done this relation before. Okay, therefore I am just writing down the relation only. So it is force by m naught, where m naught is a test pole, say. So by putting the value of F from Coulomb's law, you will get B equal to mu naught by 4 pi m by r square. So this is your relation for magnetic field intensity. Next is field due to a dipole. So on the axial line, this is a magnetic dipole, these are the pole strengths. The length of the dipole is twice L. Okay, so this length is L, this length is L, and the distance of the point where you will find out the net magnetic field is r from the center of this dipole. This is the north pole and this is the south pole. Okay, so the relation for magnetic field along the axial line or at a point in the axial line is B equal to mu naught by 4 pi 2 mr divided by r square minus L square to the power 2, okay, square, where m is the magnetic dipole moment of the bar magnet. Now in this case, if you consider, if r is much greater than L, that means if this point P is very far away, right, that means this r will become much greater than L. In such a case, your L square can be neglected, right, since r is much greater, and therefore the relation will become mu naught by 4 pi, B will become mu naught by 4 pi twice m by r cube. This will be the relation. Okay, so in vector form you can write this as B equal to mu naught by 4 pi twice m vector divided by r cube. Okay, what will be the direction of this net magnetic field? That will be along the direction of m vector, along the direction of the dipole moment. Okay, along, or we can write down B vector or B net is along m vector. What is the direction of m vector? From south to north. It is from south to north, right? Now this net magnetic field is also along this way. Okay, not going into details of all this because this is a quick revision. Next, along the equatorial line, at a point on the equatorial line. So there you see, now this is north pole, you consider a test north pole here at this point P. So the field will be repulsive here. For the south pole, the field will be attractive here. Therefore the resultant field is along this way. Okay, so here the dipole moment direction is from left to right and the net magnetic field direction is from right to left. So this is like opposite to the dipole moment. Okay, so here the relation for net magnetic field is mu naught by 4 pi m by r square plus L square to the power 3 by 2. Okay, I'm ignoring this because this was a part of the derivation. Now if r is much greater than L, that means this point is P is very far away, this r is much greater than L, right? In such a case you can ignore, you can neglect L, and your relation will become B equal to mu naught by 4 pi m by r cube. Okay, so in vector form what you can write? B vector equal to minus mu naught by 4 pi m vector by r cube. Now why do you have a minus sign? Because the direction of net field and magnetic moment vector is opposite to each other. Okay, so we can write down directly that B axial divided by B equatorial, you just, if you divide the relation you will get 2, so you can say that B axial is double of B equatorial. Next, relation for torque on a magnetic dipole. So here you have a dipole, it is placed in a magnetic field. Alright, so on the north pole the force acting will be MB, and here also MB along the opposite direction. The field is along the right. Okay, so in such a case the relation for torque comes out to be MB sine theta. In vector form you can write this as M cross B. So applying this in work done in rotating the dipole. So the dipole will have a tendency to rotate along the field. So then only you do work done, like you do work done only when you want to do like you want to rotate it opposite to the field. Okay, the work done will be stored as potential energy then. Okay, so the relation for work done is W equals to MB cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2. Say you rotate it from some initial alignment theta 1, say this is theta 1, and you take it to a final alignment theta 2, then the relation for work done will be this. Okay, MB, this is B, MB cos theta 1 minus cos theta 2. Now potential energy of the magnetic dipole. Okay, so yeah, so potential energy of the dipole. So what is the relation for potential energy? It is U equal to minus MB cos theta. Okay, so in vector form if you want to write this down, minus M vector dot B vector. Okay, now if theta equal to 0 degree, if theta equal to 0 degree, then U comes out to be 0, cos 0. Did I make a mistake? U comes out to be minus MB. Yes, cos 0 is 1, therefore it should be minus MB. Therefore potential energy is minimum. Right? If theta equal to 90 degree, then U will be 0. In fact 90 and 170 for both of this. Okay, so you can write down 90 or not 170, 270, 90 or 270. Okay, then you have, if theta equal to 180 degree, then U equals to plus MB. So here your potential energy is maximum. Now you have the figures, diagrams for these cases. So when U is MB, this will be the alignment. You call this is stable equilibrium. Okay, you see north is along the field and south is opposite to the field. This is stability. Now this is also an equilibrium condition, this is also an equilibrium condition. The only difference is that this is unstable because north is facing towards, or north is facing against the field, south is facing towards the field. This is instability. Okay, so U equal to minus MB, this will be the shape, the field is along the right. Now when theta equal to 90 degree, U equal to 0, this will be the shape. Here also U equal to 0, this will be the shape. Here north is below, here north is above. Okay, so you can study these 4 cases. So what we have next? So magnetic field lines. So you know that they are imaginary curves, right? So in a bar magnet, say this is the north pole and this is the south pole, the field lines will appear to originate from north and they will appear to sink in the south, right? And inside the bar magnet, they go from, the field lines go from south to north. They never cross each other. Bar magnets, in a bar magnet or in any magnet, the magnetic field lines never cross each other. Because if they do, you see this situation. Here, if I consider that the field lines are crossing each other, then at a single point you will have 2 different directions for the same magnetic field, which is not possible. Okay, therefore they can never cut each other. Now this applies in case of electric field lines also. Number 3, number of field lines is proportional to pole strength. Okay, more the field lines, more will be the pole strength. Number 4, number of field lines per unit area is proportional to magnetic field, magnitude of the magnetic field. Alright, now if you place two north poles facing each other or two like poles, then somewhere in between you will find out the neutral point. So in a neutral point, magnetic field lines do not exist at all. Okay. Now here is an analogy given. I am not going through this. You can study. You can go through this analogy between electric field lines and electric and magnetic dipole. The relations are shown over here. So we have tangent law. Now when you place a compass in a perpendicular field, okay, where one of the field is B vector and the other field is horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field. In such a case, okay, the compass will make an angle theta, okay, will make an angle theta with BH and come to rest, okay, and for that we write down the relation to be B is equal to BH tan theta. Okay, so this relation comes from tangent law. Now this tangent law is used in tangent galvanometer. Now this is also like ammeter. Okay, we use ammeter for measuring current. So tangent galvanometer is also used to measure electric current. Okay, it is based on tangent law. Now the relation for current in tangent galvanometer is I equals to 2RBH tan theta by mu naught n. Now this can be written as I equal to K tan theta. Okay, K tan theta, where K is a constant which you call as the reduction factor. K is 2RBH divided by mu naught n. You call this as the reduction factor. Okay, therefore you can write down I is proportional to theta. So here the galvanometer has radius, galvanometer coil has radius r, number of turns is n, and I is the current passing through. In such a case, this will be the relation for measuring the value of current. Next we have vibration magnetometer. So how do you use this vibration magnetometer? This is used for comparison of magnetic field at different places, number 1. Number 2, to compare magnetic moments of magnets, say 2-3 different bar magnets, you can compare the magnetic moments. So the relation for time period in a vibration magnetometer is 2 pi square root of I by mbh. Okay, so from here you can write down the relation for frequency 1 by 2 pi square root of mbh divided by I. Also angular frequency square root of mbh divided by I. Okay, so here I is the moment of inertia of the bar magnet. Remember, I is the moment of inertia. Okay, I is the moment of inertia, and BH is the horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field. So time period of the magnetometer is given by this relation. Frequency is this, angular frequency is this. So we have Gauss law next. So you studied about Gauss law in electricity, right? Electrostatics. So this is Gauss law in magnetism. Now you have a bar magnet. So from the north pole, field lines will come out. From the south pole, field lines will, or in the south pole, field lines will enter. Now you consider a Gaussian surface. The net magnetic flux through this closed surface or through the Gaussian surface is 0, and therefore you write down the relation for Gauss law as integral B dot ds. Okay, total magnetic field through a closed surface, that is equal to 0. So this is your Gauss law in magnetism. So why does it happen? Because isolated magnetic poles do not exist, which you call as magnetic monopole. That means you cannot have a magnet with north pole only, just as the way you can have positive charges, negative charges, isolated positive and negative charges is possible. That is not possible in case of magnet. Like isolated north pole, isolated south pole is not possible. It has not been possible so far, more appropriately. So next is Earth's magnetism. So Earth's magnetism, there are various theories supporting Earth's magnetism. One of the theories is called dynamo effect. In this, it is considered that electrical current produced by convective motion of metallic fluids. Now, Earth has a core which is solid. The outer core is molten. So all the molten materials keeps on moving because of the Earth's rotation, right? So convection, due to convective motion of these metallic fluids, a current is produced. That current gives rise to a magnetic field. Okay. Now also there is one more theory. Now you know that ionosphere. In the ionosphere, charged particles, they are also having a relative motion because of Earth's rotation, and they are also producing a magnetic field. So these are the two theories supporting Earth's magnetic field. Now the value of Earth's magnetic field at the surface ranges from 25 to 65 microtesla in Gauss. This is the value. So you can see in this diagram, this is the Earth, alright. So this is the geographic north axis and this is the geographic south. Sorry, I should not say north axis. This is the geographic north pole, this is the geographic south pole. These are fixed points. Now the geomagnetic poles, these they keep on moving. Okay. So the actual north, you can imagine a bar magnet to be inside the Earth. The true north is this, the true south is this, and you call this as geomagnetic south, you call this as geomagnetic north. A line passing through this magnetic poles, you call that as magnetic axis. A line passing through the geographic poles, you call this as geographic axis. A plane passing through geographic the geographic poles, a plane passing through the geographic poles, you call that as geographic meridian. A plane passing through the magnetic poles, you call that as magnetic meridian. Okay, we'll see that ahead. Now this is what you call a geographic equator. Okay, and this is what you call as magnetic equator. Now the field lines you can see, they are actually coming out from north only, but we call this as geomagnetic south. So it comes out from the geomagnetic south and sink in the geomagnetic north. And remember, these points are dynamic points. They are continuously moving. They move over a long period of time. They move quite dramatically. Magnetic elements. So already we talked about geographic meridian and magnetic meridian, right? So the angle between geographic meridian and magnetic meridian, this angle theta, you call this as magnetic declination. Now declination has different values at different places. Okay, so if you see this diagram for this location, okay, say this is the north pole, this is the north pole, geographic north pole, and this is the magnetic north pole, okay, or geomagnetic north. Now this angle, this particular angle, you call this as magnetic declination. Another diagram is shown over here. For different places, you see the declination is changing. Okay, so you make a measurement by considering the geographic pole and the magnetic pole. So from a certain place, this declination value will change. Next we have magnetic inclination. It is the angle between the horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field and the Earth's magnetic field. Okay, horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field and the Earth's resultant magnetic field. Okay, so you can say that it is the angle between H and B. Okay, so you measure it by using a instrument called dip meter. Now say here, this is the horizontal, right, and the magnetic field, the resultant Earth's magnetic field is this. At this point, the resultant field is here this way, it is this way. Here the resultant field is this way, vertically downwards, right? Here it is vertically this way. So here the horizontal is this. So if the Earth's horizontal is this and resultant magnetic field is this, what is the angle? They are parallel, right? So the dip angle should be 0 here. Here the Earth's horizontal is this, the resultant magnetic field will be this way. What is the angle? The dip angle will be 90 degree here. So del is 90 degree at the poles and del is 0 degree at the equator. Alright, so we'll write down those values. Del value of, so at the poles you can write down del equal to 0 degree at equator and del equal to 90 degree at poles. Now in this figure, this is del. Okay, this is the horizontal component of Earth's magnetic field, and this is the vertical component. Okay, and this is the resultant of Earth's magnetic field. So that was the angle between H and B, right? So this is your angle of del. Now you see, if this is del, H will be B cos del, V will be B sin del. Therefore we can write down H equal to B cos del and V equal to B sin del. Okay, by putting the values, now if you divide V by H, you get 10 del. So this is one of the relations. Now at poles, what will happen? At poles, you know that del is 90 degree. So at poles, you see only vertical component of the magnetic field is there, right? It exists, and horizontal component is 0. So H equal to 0. Cos 90 is 0. So H equal to B cos 90 equal to 0. V equal to B sin 90, that is B. Okay, at equator del is 0 degree. So H is B cos 0, that is B. So at equator only horizontal magnetic field exists, vertical component is not there at all. So V equal to B sin 0, that is 0. Okay, so after this you have neutral point. So what is neutral point? Where two magnetic fields, they cancel out each other, cancel the strengths of each other. There you have a region where no magnetic field lines will exist, and if you place a magnetic compass there, it will show random orientation. So when you place a bar magnet like this is like unlike poles facing each other, right? This is like poles facing each other. So when like poles face each other, then the neutral points, they lie along the equatorial line. When unlike poles face each other, then neutral point lies along the axial line. So this is what you need to remember. Like poles, in case of like poles, your neutral point is along equatorial line. In case of unlike poles, your neutral point is along axial line. Okay, so we have a couple of definitions here: magnetizing force and magnetizing, or you also call it as magnetic intensity. Now this is the extent to which a magnetic field can magnetize a material. Okay, the relation is H vector, you denote that magnetizing force, you denote with H vector, equal to B naught vector divided by mu naught. Then you have intensity of magnetization. Now this is the dipole moment developed per unit volume whenever you magnetize a substance. Okay, so dipole moment developed per unit volume. So this is also a vector quantity, m vector divided by v. Okay, intensity of magnetization is also a vector quantity. So you see the relation for magnetic dipole moment is m into twice L divided by volume, can be written as A into twice L. So the relation also becomes magnetic pole strength per unit area, okay, per unit cross section area. Next is susceptibility. Susceptibility is a measurement which tells you how easily you can magnetize a substance. So greater is the susceptibility, better, or you can say the more quickly you can magnetize that particular material. So susceptibility is denoted by chi m, and it is the ratio of I and H. I by H is equal to chi m. It has no unit, no dimension, it's a pure number. The previous were vector quantity, they had unit and dimension. Okay, those are written over there, you need to take a note of this. Going to the next one, magnetic flux density B vector, the SI unit is Tesla. So it is the number of magnetic field lines passing normally through a unit area. Okay, so B relation is mu H. The relation for B is mu H, where mu is the permeability of the material. Magnetic permeability you represent with mu, right? Permeability is a measure of the ability of a material to allow magnetic field lines to pass through it. Okay, or magnetic field lines of force, magnetic lines of force to pass through it. So greater is the permeability, better magnet will that become. Okay, just like susceptibility, permeability, these are always high in case of ferromagnetic substance. So mu is equal to B by H. So here B equal to mu H is the relation. So this has unit, this has dimension. Okay. Relation between mu and chi m, permeability and susceptibility. Okay, writing down the relation directly. So mu is equal to mu naught 1 plus chi m, and this can also be shown as mu r equal to 1 plus chi m. Okay, so here these diagrams are part of a derivation actually. So here when you have a solenoid carrying a current I, the magnetic field is mu naught Ni. Now when you put a core material, the net magnetic field becomes B naught plus Bm. Okay, where Bm is the field contributed by the core material. Okay, so the derivation is avoided. You have to remember these relations. Next we have magnetic materials. So you have three kinds of materials: diamagnetic material, paramagnetic material, and ferromagnetic material. Okay, so diamagnetic material, now whenever you place all of this material in a magnetic field, then they will be repelled, feebly repelled, opposite to the field. These will be feebly attracted towards the field, and these will be strongly attracted. Ferromagnetic substance will be strongly attracted towards the field, right? Now lines of force, you can see this diagram. Lines of force, they tend to avoid diamagnetic substance. They prefer, like they enter, some lines of force will enter through a paramagnetic substance, but in case of ferromagnetic substance, they will crowd through the ferromagnetic substance. Like ferromagnetic substance will pull all the magnetic field lines and allow them to enter through it. So examples are given over here. Just go through, just remember the names. Now you see this value, these are important, like intensity of magnetization, susceptibility and permeability. They are negative for diamagnetic substance, positive for paramagnetic substance, and highly positive for ferromagnetic substance. Less than 1 permeability, less than 1 for diamagnetic, greater than 1 for paramagnetic, and much greater than 1 for ferromagnetic substance. Temperature dependence. Now there is something you call as Curie's law. When susceptibility depends inversely on temperature, you call that as Curie's law. Okay, so if you increase the temperature, susceptibility of paramagnetic substance varies. Okay, so they obey Curie's law. In that case, you say that they obey Curie's law. Now here, diamagnetic substance, the susceptibility of diamagnetic substance, they do not depend on temperature. So you can say that diamagnetic substance do not obey Curie's law. Now here, when you increase temperature, they'll tend to lose magnetism. Okay, so they obey Curie's law, and when you heat them, they lose magnetism. And there is a certain critical temperature, you call that as Curie temperature. So if you heat a ferromagnetic substance beyond Curie temperature, then it becomes a paramagnetic substance. Okay, so both of these, they obey Curie's law, and these do not obey Curie's law, and that is the reason you see you increase the temperature, susceptibility is constant in case of diamagnetic substance, but here susceptibility is falling. Here also above Curie temperature, susceptibility falls, remember. Next we have hysteresis. So hysteresis is the phenomena in which when you magnetize and demagnetize a substance, right, then you see that magnetic induction lags behind magnetic intensity. Now we plot a graph for that. You call that B versus H graph, this B versus H graph, as hysteresis. So you have something called retentivity and coercivity. Retentivity is also called remanence. Okay, retentivity is like retaining the magnetism even when magnetizing force is removed. Okay, so that you call as residual magnetism. Coercivity is the reverse magnetic field applied, okay, to remove the residual magnetism. Now you can see this graph. So here you magnetize, like you apply magnetizing force H vector, so the substance is getting magnetized. B value has increased till here, right? Now you have increased H till here, B has increased till here. Now you'll decrease H till here, right? You'll bring the value of H to 0. What do you notice that the B value do not go to 0, but it holds, some B value holds, some magnetism is held. This is retentivity or residual magnetism. Okay, so at H equal to 0, B is not equal to 0. This you call as retentivity. Now to make B 0, magnetic field 0, right? Magnetic field induction. What you do is that you increase the value of H vector in the negative direction. Now when you reach at this point, say, then you see that B has come down. Here what is the value of B along the y-axis? B value is 0. But H value is some OC, right? Some negative value OC. This is what you call as coercivity. The reverse value of H vector that you apply to make B vector 0. Okay. Now it will continue. It will repeat in the reverse direction also. So we can write down, we can write here that you can write here retentivity, right? Retentivity or remanence, right? This is value of B. Okay, we have already written it here. Value of B at H equal to 0, this you call as residual magnetism, and coercivity is value of H at B equal to 0. I hope this graph is clear. So based on this graph, we categorize materials, okay, and their usability are decided. So you have steel and soft iron. So you see the shape of steel and the shape of soft iron. Comparatively, when you compare soft iron with steel, you see the graph is taller and it is thinner and it is wider. The area, BH curve area in case of steel is greater in comparison to soft iron. So what is it representing? This is showing that retentivity is low in comparison to this. Retentivity is high here. Okay. This is showing that coercivity is high in comparison to this. Here coercivity is low. Next, I, chi m, that is intensity of magnetization, susceptibility and permeability. All these are low in steel in comparison to soft iron. In soft iron, the values are high. Okay. Now you use steel for making permanent magnets, which are used in loudspeakers, microphone, etc. And the soft iron is used to make temporary magnets, which are electromagnets. These are used in dynamo, transformer and generator cores, etc. Okay. So high energy loss happens in magnetizing and demagnetizing steel because the area of the hysteresis loop is large. Okay, this represents that way. Now when the area is less, this represents that low energy loss happens when you magnetize or demagnetize soft iron. Now these are what you desire, what you look for. While making a permanent magnet, you look for higher value of retentivity, higher value of coercivity and permeability. And while making electromagnet, you look for low value of retentivity and coercivity but high value of permeability. Permeability should be high in both the cases only. So the materials, again you have to remember this, I'm not going through. Okay, these material names you have to remember, try to memorize. Thank you. Closing, I'll do the classroom questions tomorrow, and if you have any